This is Keep On Cooking, a podcast for people who love cookbooks and want to know more about the authors. It's also a great place to get a weekly dose of culinary inspiration to keep things pumping in the kitchen. So grab a cookbook and keep on cooking. I'm Dustin Harder, and this is Keep On Cooking. Hello and welcome to Keep On Cooking, the only podcast dedicated to plant-based cookbooks. I'm your host, Dustin Harder, and he's Sydney Prescott's mom. It's my husband, David Rossetti. How you doing, dear?
That's me, Mrs. Prescott.
What was Sydney Prescott's mom's name? Sharon. No, it wasn't. This is terrible. Why can't I remember this?
Wow. Supposed fan.
Prescott. Okay, I can't. Sorry, I'm not going to waste everyone's time with this. My brain, though, is hurting so bad.
So hurting.
Oh, my
Let
goodness.
us know in the comments, so he'll have found out by then.
Yeah. Okay. So, really got derailed. My brain can't stop thinking about it. I'm upset that I didn't know that, like that drop of the hat. How you doing, Sydney Prescott's mom?
Mom is doing well.
Some people have said some disparaging things about you behind your back. You've started a whole ruckus, just so you know.
I really have.
Yeah, you really have.
I'm sorry.
Quite the franchise. But part 7 about to come out. Sydney returns.
Sydney
oh my gosh, who's excited for Scream 7? Raise your hand.
Anybody raise your hand, please. She's back.
Speaking of things we're excited about, the keeponcooking.com blog is up for your enjoyment.
Everybody's going to it.
Everybody's going about it.
Everybody's
talking about it.
Everybody's talking about
it. It's up there. It's got recipes. We got recipes from the books coming out on there. We got recipes that have been in my vault forever and ever coming up on there.
Continue to add to them.
Yeah, it's just going to be a non-stop growing blog. It's just growing and growing. Of course, you can go there and go to the episode page for Keep On Cooking. So all the episodes are there. I've also got stuff on there like, appliances that I actually use and love in my home that you can buy, kitchen gadgets, all those things like that, things I've used over the years. Like I put some molds on there that, remember, I love doing like chocolate stuff. I love it. I just don't have the time for it. But so I do have some molds that I've loved. Actually, you can see me make some chocolate molds on that episode of Girl Scout Cookie Baking Championship that I was on Food Network, because I had to make a mold for the top of that cupcake. Remember, I made a sundae. Ooh, I should recreate that recipe for y'all and put that up on the blog.
Oh, sure.
It's just it's a little involved with the mold. Got to make like a sundae anyway, but it's fun. But it's fun. All right, so please go check out keeponcooking.com to get the latest in recipes from Keep On Cooking. And listen, today's an interesting book for me.
Tell me more.
Well, I received an advance copy of this book in the spring of 2023, and I had so many feelings rush over me, y'all. So the book is Plant-Based USA, a travel guide to eating animal-free in America, a guidebook for vegan, vegetarian, and flexitarian foodies. Now, David, what do you think my first reaction was when I got this book? Or do you remember?
I think your first reaction was, I've done this.
Well, that.
And that you were like, who is this?
Well, not so much I've done this. I here's the deal. When I first started pitching book ideas, one of my first ones was to do like,
that's right.
It wasn't to do a guide, because we'll get into it a little bit. A guide is like not really realistic. Like if you're going to have a guide to the US, you have to update it every year, especially in vegan restaurant land, right?
Well, and when was that written?
I mean, then Kevin Hart's 4 restaurants all just closed down suddenly. Like no word. Like restaurants closed. So to have just a restaurant guide that's vegan, that is expected to be like if you flip through here, anyway, we'll get to it.
We'll get to it.
But when I was first pitching book ideas with my literary agent, one of the big ones was the vegan roadie, to make the vegan roadie book and have my own recipes in it that are inspired by my travels, but then also some like guest chef recipes in it. And people just were not biting on it. So we moved on to like other ideas with Epic Vegan and Simply Vegan Cookbook and all of that. But I thought it was interesting
because then you started doing a little bit more digging. And
well, the author is not from the US. So I thought it was had not lived in the US for a long time. So I thought it was very interesting that this publisher would choose an author
Right.
who's not from the US to write a plant-based US guide. Now, had I read up on this person and been like, oh, they've traveled all around the US and they've got, a wide breadth, is that the word, of experience from
Yep.
eating food, vegan food in the
Around the nation,
US,
yeah.
then like, okay, maybe I would get it. But come to find out, she wrote it during the pandemic and did not visit most of these restaurants. Whereas I've tried, I want to say probably 50, 60% of the restaurants in this book.
Yeah.
So I'm like a little bitter and spicy. Like I'll be honest. Like I'm not trying to be like, I want to be like supportive Elle Woods about everything. Like, great, everybody do it. But it was a little weird, like for me to get this book when I had tried to sell it. And I'm like, why didn't this publisher reach out to me? Like,
Yeah, right.
firsthand experience. So it's the book is also it's so I said you can't do like a guide to the US, right? Because it's going to change all the time. That makes this book a great time capsule.
Yeah,
um
that's true.
but as we mentioned, the way the world is these days, that's just what it is. It's a time capsule. This will not serve as a definitive guide for years to come, but more of a time capsule of restaurants that maybe made it through the pandemic, maybe didn't, maybe we're trying really hard, or some restaurants that were potentially still standing when the book came out in 2023. But just as this is a time capsule, I mentioned, the vegan roadie. The vegan roadie is a time
For
capsule. So
sure.
people talk to me about those episodes. Those episodes were filmed in 2014, 15, 16, and 17. Like,
That's crazy.
I would venture to say, and this is a
10 years
wild
ago,
estimate, 10 years
for
ago,
the record.
do you think 50% of those restaurants are probably closed?
Probably.
I don't say this with joy. It saddens me and it
No.
sucks. Like, that sucks. But the restaurant world in general is very, very
Oh,
hard
well, the
right
restaurant
now.
world in general, but especially like after the pandemic, I might
Right.
even say it's like 60 or 70% that closed down.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't gone back and watched all the
But it's
episodes and
like,
done the research,
yeah,
but like,
I would not be surprised.
it's doing a guide, like a definitive guide to US vegan eating, is hard because it's always going to change. So unless you're up on sort of doing it yearly to keep it up to date,
Yeah.
that's not what this book is. So I think I'm a little like, my bitterness and sassiness comes from it being called a travel guide to eating animal free in America, because I just don't think it's a guide. I think it's a beautiful time capsule.
Yep.
And I think some of the things are still open, but definitely not all of them. So let's get into a bit of a description about the book. To be fair, right? This is a description we pulled from Amazon. Plant Based Eats USA, a travel guide to eating animal free in America, is a food guidebook for anyone looking for plant forward or vegan friendly travel experiences throughout the United States. This guidebook and directory highlights novel, innovative, and climate conscious dining options and is ideal for anyone who's interested in incorporating more plant based meals into their lifestyle.
Now, the book is organized into chapters by city and covers everything from restaurants, cafes, markets, and festivals to shopping and accommodation. Plant Based USA also features personal stories, recipes, and travel tips from leading chefs and public figures on the American plant based scene.
The book is written by Veronica Phil. So this is Veronica's bio here. Veronica Phil is an LA-based writer and brand strategist who specializes in food, beverage, and consumer packaged good brands. She is the co-founder of alternative protein company Grounded Foods Co. and author of Plant Based USA. So this is all very interesting to me. That's the end of her bio. Now we'll talk about it a little bit. Her social media presence stopped in July of 2023. So if you go on, and we did this interview a little bit before that, and the website groundedfoods.com doesn't work anymore. Veronica's LinkedIn says she's back in Australia. So the LA based writer is now still an Australia based writer. Maybe and we recorded any of this before this went down. So it's all sort of a mystery to me. I feel like this is another podcast episode altogether talking about like, where is Veronica Phil? Where in the world is
Where
Veronica
in the
Phil?
world is
Or
Veronica
talking about
Phil?
the dark side of Grounded Foods. What happened to Grounded Foods? So I don't know any of that information. Instead of dwelling on the unknowns, though, my true crime brain is churning. It's just like the Annie Fio episode where I'm like, where in the world is Annie Fio?
Annie. Where is Annie?
Where's Annie? Where's Veronica?
Where's
What happened to
Veronica?
Grounded Foods? But listen, let's get into the interview. I kind of I know I've been sassy. I know I've been spicy. I'm just keeping it real. I had feelings when I got the book, so I wanted to share all that with you. And I've been holding on to this interview for quite some time because of those feelings, if I'm being honest. But I thought, I really do love that this is a time capsule and that you can get a look at restaurants that were happening 2022, 2023. And I happen to be obsessed with Australian accents and Australia.
That's true.
What's the number one place on my bucket list, David?
Australia.
Australia. And we're going to make it happen. And it's going to be like a month-long trip. And like we're doing it in the next, like, I'm going to say 5 years.
That's right.
Maybe 10. But it's going to happen. I say 10 because we really got to plan for it. It's going to be a long trip. And I love Australian accents. So I loved having Veronica on. I was lovely to chat with her. I thoroughly enjoyed this interview with her. And she's a darling of a person. It was so fun for me to take a walk down memory lane myself with some of these restaurants mentioned that we talk about. And of course, I got to learn about some of the new ones I haven't been to as well, because we did film so long ago, and the Vegan Roadie is a time capsule. So really, it was a very expansive interview in that I was talking about my experiences. She was talking about hers in researching the book. So it was great. So please welcome to the Keep On Cooking pod, the elusive Veronica Phil. She's a writer, she's a brand strategist, and she's making magic with hemp as the co-founder of Grounded Foods. Please welcome to the podcast, Veronica Phil. Veronica, it's lovely to have you here. Thank you for joining me today.
Very much for having me on.
Yes, it is an absolute pleasure and joy to meet you. I'm going to get into our icebreaker question right away. Since we're all about restaurants today, I actually kept in that theme here. But is there a restaurant you went to as a kid that you wished would just like get into it already and veganize it? And then what was your favorite dish to order there?
I grew up in a very isolated town in Australia called Fremantle.
Okay.
Serious hippie town. I will say up front, even though I'm not vegan, I grew up vegan for the first 25 years of my life. So I guess I have a soft spot for like natural whole foods as my comfort foods versus other people will go to, ice cream or mac and cheese or something. I think of carrot buds and soy ice cream. Like that's what I wish I could still find. So it was actually a cafe, not a restaurant, that I'm reminded of, called Manor Whole Foods in Fremantle. Probably still exists, but it was just like a health food store where you could get a really nice hot meal for lunch. Everything was just unprocessed, just food that you can recognize. And that's kind of why I'm inspired to keep working on that path, even though that's not my lifestyle. I only want to work on things at this stage of my life that I think is fixing or helping the food system rather than deteriorating it further.
Sure. Yeah. And you do go into a little bit of this book, which we'll get into, which I love. I mean, a lot of it about the book, but well, mine is, when you say the comfort items, mac and cheese and all that, mine was this place. I grew up in Michigan. There's a place called Tony's. I'm sure a lot of places in the United States have a place called Tony's, but it was all Italian food, right? So I remember we'd skip school. I'd get like a steak sandwich, and it had marinara and mozzarella on it, and then fries like smothered in gravy. And I'm just like, gosh, those things are so easy to veganize now. And like, I haven't been to that restaurant probably in 20 years, because there's not really anything there for me. But it would be so easy to do if I wanted to swoop in there and be like, hey guys, you want to put this on your sandwich? You know what I mean?
Business ideas already.
yeah, exactly. Right. Well, you're calling in from, you're in LA. You're based in LA now, right?
LA right now. Soon to be back in Australia after 3 years. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Back to Australia for good or for a while, or?
Not sure yet, but my husband is opening a new restaurant. So
fantastic. Oh, that's great. Oh, fantastic. Well, of course, your accent tells us that you're not from LA originally. You've talked about Australia a little bit. So can you tell us a bit of your backstory and where you're from and how food became a part of your professional life?
Yeah, it's just, I'm one of those people that lives to eat versus the other way around. I don't understand people that eat to live. I just do not. It does not synchronize with my brain. But I definitely didn't come from a food background. started my career as a behavioural economist, working in the bowels of government in Canberra. Super, boring, nothing to do with food. I found it, to be honest, so dreary that behind the scenes, I kept trying to think of hobbies that I could do at my desk, just to keep ticking along. I started writing because I thought, well, it's going to be really obvious if I start playing saxophone in the office.
Writing was a more quiet approach, I see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And specifically because I love food, I started writing food reviews and doing a little bit of copywriting for restaurants around town. And that just grew and grew behind the scenes. I'd do it at night, and eventually got a contract with a major national newspaper to write food reviews. And it just grew and grew to the point where I'm like, stuff being an economist, like, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Lets me just do what I really enjoy, just eat for a living and talk about it.
Yes.
And that's the time when I met my now husband, who was about to open a beautiful fine dining restaurant in Melbourne, Australia.
Oh, fantastic.
We met each other on a dating app a week before he opened the restaurant. I have no idea how he had time to be
on a dating app
a week before his restaurant opened. But we I remember meeting him for the first time and realizing instantaneously, like, I'm either going to work with this guy and I'll make him famous, or I'll marry him. And we ended up doing a bit of both. So we did get married. And I became, I guess I started working for him doing the marketing behind the restaurant. And again, we just grew and grew this reputation of being very innovative, very technology forward, multi-sensory fine dining venue. Pretty wacky. Like, we didn't really hire traditional hospitality workers. We would hire actors, musicians, engineers, sound and lighting technicians, everything we could to influence the guest experience and get people to feel things. We'd hire a perfumer and all these types of things just to make it really exciting. And over time, I think from his perspective, because he's, again, not a vegan chef, but very plant forward in what he does, he thinks that cooking with traditional proteins is just lazy. Like, it's an easy win, just putting a steak on a plate.
Sure.
There's no skill in that. So he would get really excited by messing with people's minds and seeing what he could trick them into eating. And still think that it's like traditional. He'd make oysters out of celeriac and just call it an oyster.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, but not actually tell people that essentially what he was making was a vegan fine dining restaurant without calling it vegan. Simply because it was easier for him to avoid the risk of allergies and dietary requirements that were coming in. So this was just him being practical. Like, when you're talking to chefs in a kitchen, one of the first pain points they have is the number of dietaries that are coming in that night. Every single table it's either gluten-free or dairy-free or gluten-free. And it's impossible to make that many changes and that many different iterations of a dish without some risk in there.
Right.
So that's why he started just playing around with vegan. We noticed that more and more customers were coming in asking for animal-free, dairy-free, vegan alterations to the dishes. And so we just became really interested in exploring that more. And as it turns out, he had a cheese course on the menu. It was a blue cheese, a camembert. I can't even remember now, but it was delicious. I thought the cheeses were from a little artisan farm in rural Victoria. You do. For a year, we had that on the menu as the final course. And after a year, my husband Sean told me, "Hey, what do you think of these cheeses, though? They're made from hemp." So it turns out he'd been making them secretly, as chefs do, at 3 a.m. in the kitchen when was watching, and seeing how far along he could trick people into thinking that it was really. So economist over here was like, I've got to make a side hustle. Take his recipe, do it, and make him work for me. That was what was going through my mind.
Your wheels were turning.
Yeah.
I love the way you tell this story in the book, because you're like, he create, all the things you've said where it's this experience, right? Which sounds very theatrical, which I love. I'm totally into. But then I love you say, and then there was this cheese course that I just didn't understand. It was like all of these dishes sort of wowing you, and this cheese course, you were like, why is this cheese course at the end of this? Like this, it's boring to me considering all the things you're doing, right? But then you found out it was hemp, and you just ran with it.
It was really weird because he's known for doing such extraordinary, show off dishes.
Sure.
It's like, so why are you serving a cheese
Yeah.
ball? But as I sat there and thought about it, I mean, this was around the time that Beyond and Impossible was really starting to gain traction.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing all this movement in plant-based meats, but cheese was still pretty traditional. Even from Australia, we didn't have Miyokos in Australia. We had maybe Daya, and that was it.
Sure.
There really wasn't anything else.
Sure.
And the more I thought about it, the more I saw the opportunity to make something that, for one, is genuinely appealing to non-vegan diners. And I knew, because I was one, and if this was tricking me, like, hang on, let's run with this. This is something, this has legs. But using hemp, I don't think Sean realized what an extraordinary business model that was, because hemp is so low cost to work with, so dense in nutritional value. But he could make stuff that was 4 times the calcium of real dairy using hemp, just as much protein. So we're not even having those issues of, is this just a ultra processed substitute?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, this is genuine nutrition out of a really underutilized natural ingredient. Long before we have to think about precision fermentation and bioreactors and investing gazillions of venture capital into it, we can do something with real ingredients just using the skills of a chef.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that, bringing me around to the restaurant book, I just really, really believe, now being in the thrusts of Silicon Valley as a startup founder, I really to believing in chefs as this untapped resource, this skill set of people that are so critical to introducing more plant-based options and animal-free options into the consumer mindset. It can't just be a science thing. It can't just be a Silicon Valley thing. You've got to have the chefs as the translators to actually make it appealing and get it in people's mouths and get them to eat it.
That's exactly right. Yes. So true. And I just want to, since we did talk about the cheese plate and the hemp cheese, tell everyone about Grounded Foods then. Tell us what the products are that you offer. I've had them. They're delicious. Tell everyone what you have to offer over at Grounded Foods.
Yeah, we are pretty much a hemp, we're a bunch of hemp lords. We created a way of making dairy alternatives out of hemp as the primary resource. It turned out when Sean came up with this in a kitchen, it had actually never been done before in the world. So that was why we created the company. Me coming from the business perspective, decided to start the patent process pretty quickly once we realized hey, this is unusual. Everything to that point had been done with either nuts or coconut oil, soy, these kinds of ingredients, which I think, we shouldn't shit on those products as competitors, because all of these products are important to, I think, giving people options. Like they're all just different flavors. Think of how many cheese styles there are. We can't just replicate one cheese with one method.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So it does require all these different resources and ingredients. We're the hemp people that do it.
Yep.
So
that's great.
Yeah. So we, at the moment, we do cream cheese. We do cheese squeezy.
The cheese squeeze. I love the cheese squeeze.
Yeah. But we're much more fascinated by like what else can we actually do with these natural ingredients and just bring that more to the forefront. And I guess if we're going to compete at all, compete with the ones that are just putting starch, filler.
Yeah. You've got don't you have a goat cheese and a feta cheese? Or am I thinking?
Yeah, it's a marinated goat's cheese.
There we go.
When we came to the US, no one knew what that was. It's actually modeled on a product by Meredith Dairy, a cheese company, very, very well known back in Australia. It's like Australia's national cheese. Everyone loves it. But
to have it marinated like that?
Because it's marinated in oil.
Got you.
We found that people found it very confusing. Like, what do I do with this? Why it's wet?
Well, now they'll know. They'll learn. They'll recognize. It's great. New things. You're teaching new things. Oh, I love it. So everybody check out, where can they check out more from Grounded Foods? What's the website for that?
www.groundedfoods.com, but I suggest you go to our TikTok instead at
Grounded. Oh, you active on the TikTok. I love it. I love it. Well, we're going to get into your book, Plant-Based USA, A Travel Guide to Eating Animal-Free in America. And as you've shared, from Australia, and now you're in the US for a few years. So how did the responsibility of writing a travel guide about the US land in your lap?
As I said, I used to be a writer, and then, you spend all of your career waiting to get a book deal or a big gig. And the moment that I stopped doing that and decided to become a cheese lord instead and move to the US, a publisher contacted me, one of my previous editors, and said, "Hey, would you like to write a book about
ring ring
restaurants?" And I'm like, it was literally the same week that we were about to move.
Oh my gosh.
To Australia from Melbourne, packing up our house to move to the US. We just got VC investment to launch our startup, biggest move of our lives. I'd walked away from my job. My husband had literally just walked away from his restaurant because this was an opportunity. And I thought, why not tack a book on as well?
Why not?
As ever. And we came here all excited. 7 days later, this virus started, which turned out to be COVID.
What virus? What are you talking about? I don't know what.
All of the borders closed, like a week after we got out, the borders closed. So it was such just a turn of luck that we got here before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you.
But I immediately freaked out because I'm like, what does this mean for my book? How am I going to visit this restaurant?
Yes.
And I was in close communication with my editor for the months and months. This book was actually delayed by about 2 years because of
COVID.
But I originally started working on it in March 2020.
Wow.
The purpose of it, I think, for me changed over that time because I kept just bubbling away at it while I was doing the startup.
Mm-hmm.
And it was super hard because coming from the restaurant industry and watching all of our peers start to lose their businesses while we're starting to grow one.
Right.
Really upsetting. And just knowing the personal stories behind it, to me, this was not just a travel guide. I mean, if you want a travel guide, go on TripAdvisor or
sure.
Right?
Sure.
I wanted to focus on the stories behind the actual people. I wanted to talk to them and find out, like, hey, if this goes to hell, what are you going to do next? Like, what are you going to open next? Or are you pivoting? Or how are you coping through it?
Yeah.
Just putting the focus more on that. So to me, it's very much a snapshot in time of that period. I think the hardest thing was that so many were closing and I was trying
to Yeah. I had originally, when I started this podcast, it was originally intended to be, we ordered all the equipment. We're like, let's do a continuation of the Vegan Roadie, but do it podcast form. We'll talk to chefs. We'll interview chefs from different restaurants. And then I was just like, I can't do it right now. Nobody knows what's happening. I don't want to ask a chef, what's your favorite dish? And like when they don't know if their doors are going to be open next week. So I can imagine writing this book, you're in that moment where you're like, oh, I have to be sensitive. Like, what's happening? It's not just a phone call and a conversation. There was so much uncertainty involved when you were writing this book that had to be a little like mind-boggling to navigate.
Absolutely. And you have to be sensitive of, like, sometimes I'd interview a restaurant owner and they'd be like, I don't really know if I even want to be promoted
right
now.
Right.
It's like, fair enough.
Yeah, man. Well, everybody, the design for this book is quite like Veronica's aesthetic here. It's very cool, very colorful, great photos in here, and just the layout's really cool too. I got it, and I mean, it's a hefty book. There's some heftiness to it. And then just the green and the pink and everything. I just love it so much. So congrats on this. I mean, it's just so cool to flip through even. And as you say, I love that you said a time capsule because, that's kind of the hard thing with travel guides too. And especially during COVID, things closing, this, that, all these different things happening. So this is sort of a time capsule of what's going on at this time, and being able to see it, and some things will remain, some things won't, new things will come, all the things like that. So all books are sort of a time capsule like that. I mean, unless you're planning to do a travel guide, every single.
Wanted it to be, for me, I wanted the scenario in my mind, when you have that non-vegan relative come around, like
Yes.
you've got Gary coming around, you've got this on your coffee table.
Yep.
He's like, oh, what's this vegan stuff?
Yep.
It's just not what you expect.
Yeah.
It's something that is really accessible for everyday people. It just looks cool.
Yep.
And hopefully just inspires people to check out a restaurant that they might not normally have considered.
Yes.
That was the idea.
I love it. And you did that. You did a great job on that. And you have 18 major cities in here. And I love the front matter of this book. It's sort of what we've been speaking about already. It speaks to my heart. You mentioned how the restaurants are chosen in this book, regardless of personal taste, but because they're doing something special while displacing animals from the food system in the process. And there were so many times I was filming the Vegan Roadie and I would interview a chef or a business owner who opened up about their business because they opened their business because they wanted to create change for the better. So I just love that this book is lifting these businesses up, paying tribute to them in a way, and you're highlighting them and even created your own business while you were doing it because you wanted change for the better. So it's just good energy all around. Is there a particular restaurant that comes to mind in here? Because you talk to so many restaurants, is there one that comes to mind where their story sticks out to you? Like, I know they all do in a way, but I'm curious if anything pops up right away when I ask that, a story that comes to mind.
I think it's the family run businesses, or ones that it's just a solo founder, or often, like so many family run ones, often a couple, that there's no money in restaurants. You don't
no
to make money. The margins are so thin, so it's really got to be a passion of love.
Yes.
So look, I don't want to say one in particular, because we'll talk about more specific restaurants, but just those businesses where it's not coming from a big group of old school hospitality operators that are to just make money, and it's not just a celebrity chef doing a chain or something, but organic businesses where the big questions day to day is like, can I pay all my staff today?
Right. Yeah, there were some people I would meet on the road, and they opened because oh, my brother was in the hospital with this, and we started researching, we started eating healthier, and then everything got better. I'm not saying that happens for everyone, but I'm saying they had an experience where plant-based food really affected their health. Or someone's doing it completely for the animals. They're opening a restaurant. So it is cool to hear those stories. Those are my favorite. And let's get into it. Let's start where you're at. You're based in LA. So what's a favorite LA spot for you from this book?
Yeah, my go-to recently has been Pura Vita.
I saw those mozzarella sticks. You were having on TikTok. They look so good.
I love it. Chef Tara is lovely for a start, but she's just created something, again, very special in that it's just a sexy wine bar.
Yeah.
There's no greenwashing here. It's very much vegan, but there's no pictures of people hugging cows or eating rice in there. It's just wine. It's dimly lit. It's a real date night.
Yeah.
It's quite romantic. I think it is very unpretentious in that as well. So, you're not going to get any sleazy Erewhon style side eye when you're when you're eating there. Even the last time that I went there, my go-to is usually the Black Magic Pizza, because I'm a mad bitch for anything truffle. But
I feel that.
But I tried the carbonara for the first time, and again, it's just like magical. Like the cream on it, I think it's a mix of avocado and macadamia. But then getting that bacony crunch from shiitakes, which lends so well to recreating that crispiness in texture and the smokiness. So anytime you're in town, that's where I would go there.
Absolutely. I've been one time and I went with someone and we got 2 pizzas and there was this whole conversation back and forth because I was with someone who was gluten-free. And I don't know if they offer gluten-free pasta on the menu. I feel like they do, but we ended up with 2 pizzas and I wish we would have had a pasta and a pizza. But either way, I was satisfied. I love pizza, so it's like no complaints
It's
from
the
me.
kind of thing that, as someone that has to, avoid gluten, I would just eat it anyway and deal with the consequences.
Yeah. Well,
It's worth it.
yeah, right. Well, along with Pure Vita, you mentioned Sage Plant-Based Bistro, Crossroads Kitchen, Burger Lords, Monty's Good Burger, Nick's on Beverly, Cena Vegan, and Double Zero. And we're going to jump around a bit because you have some of my favorite spots out here, and I want to shout them out as well. You've got the Vegan Nom in Austin. I love this place. We filmed here for the Vegan Roadie, and it's some of the best tacos I've ever had in my life. I dream about them. I had a breakfast taco, I had a bulgogi beef taco, and then some sort of like 3-bean taco that was like packed with a bunch of heat, and it's so good. And the owner, Chris Rios, was just competed on Guys Grocery Games on Food Network too. Yeah, so it was cool to see him on there with some vegan representation. Everyone talks about how awesome the vegan scene is in Austin. Were you surprised by it when you started researching it, or was it as you expected?
No, I was surprised. And one of the things I learned is that anywhere where you've got a really traditional meat or dairy industry or culture, you're going to have a radical counterculture. So that's actually where you're going to find some real gems.
Yes.
So to me, I mean, as soon as I think Austin, I think, well, it's going to be very meat heavy,
right?
Very heavy. But yeah, what I learned is that no, that's where you're actually going to find people that are shouting even louder to show you something different.
Yeah, there was a burger, like because they have a lot of food trailers there, which you mentioned counterculture. They're awesome too. Super is amazing. They've turned that into I think it's a food cart now or a food trailer. And then gosh, I think it was Arlo's maybe. I don't know, but I had a bacon cheeseburger there that literally reminded me of the bacon cheeseburger that I had at Wendy's. So Austin is like moving and shaking, all sorts of different stuff. It's great. And next, we're going to jump into one of my absolute favorite cities, Chicago. Do you have a favorite in Chicago?
Chicago Diner.
Classic.
Look, I had almost a spiritual moment there when I tasted the Reuben sandwich.
Okay.
It's not normally something that I would order.
Sure.
I'm not a huge fan of seitan-based meat substitutes just because I've been eating it since the 80s. Like that's what my mom and dad used to feed.
Yeah.
And, it's got a reputation for being pretty rubbery and it's its own food group, right? It's a thing. So they talked me into ordering the Reuben because they're like, no, this is very different. We make the meat in-house. It goes through a whole process. I think it's fermented and smoked. And I'm like, okay, I'll try this. And I was with a friend of mine who lives in Chicago. He's a meat eater. He took the first bite and he's just like, you've got to try this. This is, I don't know how to explain this. And yeah, it just tasted exactly like a regular meat-based Reuben sandwich. I don't know how it was just such a simple thing and from an unexpected diner. Like I thought that it's very 1980s in the way that it's been around for a long time. So my perception going into this restaurant was that it's going to be pretty old school. Like I'm going to see like plain tofu and brown rice patties and stuff.
Right.
No, I would go back just for that sandwich.
Oh, I love that. It's when we were on the road, everyone would tell me, "Oh, we have the best Reuben," and I got to a point when we were filming where I was like, "Don't show me the Reuben." And Reubens and nachos, everybody was like, "We have the best," and I was like, "Okay, we'll see." But I love a good Reuben, so I'm gonna have to try it at the Chicago Diner. And you mentioned the Handlebar in here, one of my favorite places, just because I love myself. It's a treat now because, I'm not getting any younger, but I love myself a little plate of biscuits and gravy. Just, So good, and so simple to me, and just so hearty and satiating and satisfying. And I love, love, love. You mentioned Liberation Kitchen, formerly Upton's Break Room, from the owners of Upton's Naturals, and they actually just celebrated 10 years at Liberation Kitchen, so that's nice. But I love their menu. It satisfies cravings, like you said in the book. It's reminiscent of a corner deli or college cafeteria, wide range of sandwiches and donuts and items like that. I'm a fan, everybody, of the fried bacon mac and cheese, and they have a traditional Chicago style Italian sandwich, which you can't miss. It's got their seitan thinly sliced, served with some mild giardiniera. And while we're talking about Chicago, Veronica, you were there. I saw the video going to Chicago Diner. Did you happen to go this time to Bloom Plant Kitchen by any chance?
I didn't.
I want you to put it on your list, and listeners, put it on your list. They've got, yes, write it down. They've got a great tasting they do on Friday nights, a chef tasting, and it's very inexpensive, but it's just a lovely experience if you're back in Chicago and you want to hit that up. But let's take a spin and check out Miami. What lights you up in Miami, Veronica?
I think it's very on trend right now because Barbie is everywhere.
Yes.
There is a little bakery called Bunny Cakes, and I really like not only the way the venue looks. I mean, just if you just look it up on Google, it's I'm a lady of pink. You can see very clearly, and sparkles, and it just ticks all the right boxes for me. It just looks like such a fun place to be as an adult, let alone to take kids.
Right.
But that aside, the founder story is pretty cool. So it's run by a lady called Mariana. She has 5 kids. She started this bakery because her 2-year-old was having a birthday coming up. He's dairy free. She was vegetarian. They couldn't find anywhere to get a birthday cake that met their dietary requirements as a family. And so, as any boss businesswoman does, she's like, fine, I'll just open my own bakery. Done.
Amazing. Problem solved.
Exactly. And that's how it's come about. But I like that it's not really marketed as a vegan bakery. It's more around inclusivity. So it's, allergen friendly.
Sure.
It's vegan, but it's just somewhere where you can go where you don't have to worry about, dietary restrictions and allergies. And that's what I really, really like about it. So it's got some heart.
Yeah, that way they have something for everyone, which I love. That's always great. You also mentioned Planta, Minty Z, Timeout Market Miami, and Seed Food and Wine Week. And I want to mention to everyone, I think it's called Le Artisan Cafe or Bakery, but best croissants, vegan croissants, so yummy. So if you're in Miami, check that out too. And now I was in NYC for a long time, so I was so excited to see what you had listed in this chapter. And you've got Screamer's Pizzeria in Brooklyn listed from here. Best place, everybody, for a vegan slice. And there's like a Van Leeuwen down the way, so you can hop over and grab a scoop of ice cream if you're having a pizza ice cream kind of day, which that sounds like a good day to me. And then another one you had in here that I adore, Beyond Sushi, always and forever. Being able to go in and order a bunch of sushi, different kinds of vegan sushi, is everything to me. And I especially love taking people there. The one on 37th Street, everybody. It's got a lot of space, a lot of tables for you to sit at. And this chapter must have been hard because there's so much in NYC. So what's a favorite NYC place for you?
It's really hard to pick a favorite. And something that I wanted to say up front about the book is that it's like, this is by no means ranking restaurants.
Sure.
It's not a review book. It's just places that I think are cool. And I couldn't fit them all in.
No, there's no way. There's no way.
But one of the ones that I really liked was Dirt Candy, just because back at the start of when we came to the US, we'd been talking to the chef there about our cheese as well. And my husband, I mean, chefs can be a bit pretentious, I'll admit, especially in that echelon of fine dining. And when he says, I rate this place, she's amazing, I'm like, okay, let me take a look for the book. And yeah, I understand now why he said you have to check that one out, because it's around using, vegetables as that center of the plate. You don't need to rely on traditional animal proteins to create something that's not only satisfying, but just really cool, so that you want to go there because it's novel and because it's done so creatively. That's what I think Amanda, the chef, does brilliantly. It's just deconstructing naturally occurring ingredients, vegetables, and presenting them in a way that you've never seen before, and creating these flavors and textures that you've never experienced before. I think as a foodie, that's what excites me. I don't care if it's dairy or dairy free. Like I'm looking for an experience that's just really cool. If you can do that without the animals, that's going to be my preference.
I had a broccoli hot dog there, if I recall. And then I also had it was a very so this is what I'm saying. It's very out of the box. It was like an onion chocolate cake. I need to revisit again because this was some time ago. And I remember we were kind of like, it's cool, but I'm also like, what's happening here? You know what I mean? But that's sort of the experience of it all, really,
Exactly. And I think that's important for the plant-based industry more broadly. I think is positioning these foods not as though you're taking away from people. Like we're not taste away. Let's focus on actually adding something that you can't get from.
We're actually putting more on the plate. We're having more fun, basically. And we're thinking outside the box. We're using flavors in a different way to create different things. It really can be magical, depending on people's perspective. But let's head over to Kansas City. We would be remiss not to mention the one and only Mud Pie Bakery, owned by Ashley and Michael Valverde. It's a must for me whenever I find myself in Kansas City. Cupcakes, scones, Pop-Tarts, great coffee. I'm a sweets guy. And I always joke with people about how when we were filming on the road, bakeries would be like, here's a box of baked goods to go with you after we filmed all day with all these sweets. And me and the cameraman would be like, no. But then we were like, well, it's rude not to take it. And we'd be like, we're not going to eat any of it. And then we'd be like, we would be eating sweets for 2 to 3 days. It was just ridiculous. But whenever I tell that story, I think of Ashley. I see the box she was giving me at Mud Pie, I remember, and it was just this beautiful box of beautiful baked goods, and nothing says love more than that. It's so great. And
I always think back to their story from interviewing them of telling me how the mum was working alongside them in the kitchen when they first started, on the cakes, and providing critique because she wasn't vegan or she's not vegan, so she was like the taste tester. But it just, anytime you mention or anyone mentions Mud Pie, I just have the voice of all mothers in my head critiquing. Are you sure it should look like that? Oh, you're going to do it like that today? Okay, interesting.
That sort of passive criticism that's like, I'll say it this way. They'll change it. They'll think that it's, I'm being nice about it, right?
But that's just what immediately came to my mind.
Oh, you're gonna do it that way. That's interesting. That's nice. How funny. So everybody get to Mud Pie. You also mentioned Pirate's Bone Burgers, Gigi's Vegan and Wellness Cafe in Kansas City. Now let's talk about Denver. Do you have a favorite place in Denver? Denver's been one of those ones for me. It's been over the last few years, it's finally started to have more options, but for a while it was just a few. So what do you have as a favorite in Denver?
My pick, I think, has to be Somebody People because they're Aussies, and it was you just click straight away. Just seeing their faces, seeing the menu, I immediately hang on, these people are from Australia. These people know how to sling a proper coffee.
Yes.
And then even just they've got quite unexpected artwork, a bit of David Bowie references. It's very much what I remember and love from the Melbourne food scene, which is a bit eclectic and a bit out there. But it's very Mediterranean focused, very plant forward again. So they're not really relying on any meat substitutes at Somebody People. It's all about making the vegetables the center of the plate and star of the show. So lots of fresh pastas, fresh salads.
Great.
In a really just beautifully kit out kind of venue.
Yeah, I love that. How long have they been there? I've never been to Somebody People.
It's been there for a few years now.
Okay.
I believe Trish and Sam, the owners, have been to a couple of places in the US where they've been doing hospitality. But this one, look, it's been there for several years at least.
Great.
COVID, because I remember talking to them just around that time, and they were really in the thick of it, like wondering what are we going to do, how are we going to pivot. We can do takeaway and, you know, ordering, and I'm so proud that they've pulled through and that it's from the looks of it still going really, really strong.
Oh, I love that. Good. I'll have to prioritize that next time I'm there. Somebody people, I'll make sure I eat there. And you mentioned City City in here, which is owned by the same people that own the popular Denver vegan restaurant Watercourse. And I wanted to bring up City City because there is a waffle I had there once upon a time that I became obsessed with. It was like this savory waffle with a cheddar fondue and a vegetable ragu. And I was like, this is everything I want. And I came home, I recreated it because I can't have it there every day. Not that I would have it every day, but I can't even go there as a treat because, you know, I'm in Atlanta, so I can't get there. So I recreated it, and I'm so happy when I make it. I make like a coconut cheese fondue for it. Now, that's the cool thing about being on the road and knowing these restaurants like you do as well. I'm sure you get inspired by different things that you see too. So it's cool to have those conversations with owners. Have you met anyone, or in your research for this, what did it inspire anything that you've been creating, recipe or cheese wise or anything like that?
My husband is the inspiration behind
I love it. That's great.
I mean, it was a very strategic move to marry a very skilled. Like, it's just like, I can't speak of it highly enough.
I love it.
But the way that we've worked together, I think, is really interesting because he's come from a completely different culinary background. Like, he's just, you know, chefs at that level are very, very connected to their suppliers, to the farm, to their producers. You know, he would, at his restaurant, would get everything grown specifically for his restaurant. So he'd be working to work out what strains of, you know, an albino strawberry he wants.
Right.
So it's definitely not something that's focused on alleviating pressures on the animal food chain. But then when he met me, I think I started to talk to him about my childhood and my background in eating stuff that was completely unprocessed, whole foods, not coming from animal sources. And I think that kind of excited him by the creative challenge of like, how can I put my skills towards making stuff like that that's just better than, you know, a block of tofu.
Right. Yeah. Well, we all want it to be better than just a old block of tofu, so that's good. Well, a city that I personally refer to as one of the best when people ask me about cities they should visit where they can eat all the vegan things is Philadelphia. It's just the best. I love it so much. And you mentioned veg in here, which has been around forever and honestly still gives me a thrill every time I go in. They have a rutabaga fondue that I've tried to recreate several times, speaking of being inspired by, and I'm always like hinting to Chef Rich Landau there. I'm like, can you just give me that recipe? Like, I just hand it over maybe, because I cannot figure it out how you make it as tasty as it is. And it's served with this delicious little pretzel loaf that I love. And one time I went, they had a horseradish ice cream even. Like, it's very creative, and it's a nice like experience to have if you know, it's a great date night spot, that kind of thing like that. What stuck out as a must eat for you in Philly? Anything come to mind?
Well, I had that one.
Really? Yeah.
I think the philosophy of dining there is very similar to what we just spoke about with Dirt Candy. Yeah. Much higher end. You know, it's not the cheapest venue, but sometimes you need to treat yourself.
Treat yourself. Make a night of it. Do the thing. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
And again, it's just vegetable forward. So really, really skilled. Again, partnered team, husband and wife team. I believe Rich's wife is the song.
Yep. Yeah, Kate Jacoby. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So it's just a common theme here. But yeah, that was my pick as well. I've got the eggplant dish in my mind. I don't remember exactly what it was called, but I know that it was eggplant, and it's one of those things that I will now have to go down to the local store and buy an eggplant and try and make it.
Try and recreate it. I get it. I hear you. It's like always what happens to me. I have something delicious and I'm like, well, how do I do this at home then? There's one, if you get back in Philly, there's a place called Miss Rachel's Pantry. You have to make a reservation at it. It's sort of like a supper club because she only does a couple services a week, I think. But if you get to try that, it's totally worth it. And another place I wanted to tell you about is Goldie. They've got this tahini milkshake. Share it. It's very filling. It's very filling. So share it with somebody.
I might have heard of this when I was researching, but it never
Oh my
made.
gosh. Yeah, I don't think it's fully vegan. I could be wrong on that. I haven't been there in a long time.
Let's delete that one then.
But that milkshake's vegan. That tahini milkshake is vegan, and I tell you, it is worth it. You have a great section of the back called "Not Your Everyday Deli." You mentioned the Beehive Deli and Market in Nashville. They hands down make the best pepperoni, y'all. I love that you mentioned them. You've got the Vreamery from California in here, Rebel Cheese in Austin, Riverdale in New York, and you shout out the OG Herbivorous Butcher in Minneapolis. And my husband is obsessed with the Herbivorous Butcher jerky. Listeners, if you want more from the Herbivorous Butcher, you can check out episode 62. Aubrey and Kale were on here talking about the Herbivorous Butcher book. And you've got it mentions, I'm curious if you've come across, do you have like a favorite vegan grocery store at all in your research at all? Any that popped up or any that you found were most beloved that come to mind?
I think this is partly geographical, but also because they're sweethearts. I think Bestie's Vegan Paradise here in LA, which is my local one. They're just lovely team. Really, I remember actually standing there doing a demo of my own cheese bread.
Yes.
On this sweltering hot day during COVID, and just everyone that came in was so friendly and excited just by like being able to speak to the founder of the brand.
I love it.
Made me feel good.
Yeah.
I also love the fact that they only supply or stock products that are made by independent brands. So they're not going to be selling, Silk milk or general milk products and stuff.
Sure.
And they specifically look for brands that are run by founders of minority groups, so female founders, Black-owned businesses. That just makes me feel, I think, a lot better about spending some money on my food.
Absolutely. I haven't been there yet, and I don't know how long they've been open or if I just missed it when I was in LA, but I've not been there, but I've heard people say great things, so I've got to check it out.
Dustin, they've got a soft serve machine in there. They have a run club. Like they have a running club where everyone gets an ice cream, a soft serve.
Nice. Very good. I'd run for ice cream. That might be one of the only ways you get me running, but I'd run for ice cream. You got another section in here labeled other venues, and I was so happy to see Mellow Mushroom made it in here because we actually have one down the street here in Atlanta, and it's always a great place to take, like, when my family visits or my husband's family visits, we can take everyone there. There's something for everyone. And always they want to try all of the vegan options, and then they get obsessed with that. So it's like I try and order enough to share. But I love that you say the aesthetic is like a 90s Nickelodeon acid trip, because you're not wrong. And I thought you described it so well. I was like, she is very correct on that. That is a very accurate description. And you mentioned Voodoo Donuts, created by the wacky duo Kenneth Cat Daddy Pogson and Trey Shannon. Everyone, you can see this wacky duo on an episode of the Vegan Roadie. We go to Portland. You mentioned how fun their creations are in the description. You point out some donuts, like the donut dusted with cinnamon, shaped like a blunt, which I thought was hysterical. And they have so many like that. Did you happen to see the one they have called the Cock and Balls?
I didn't, but I would have.
It's exactly what you think it is. It's a cock and balls. I was just like, is this for real? Yeah, I was like, this is bananas to me. I didn't know if it was a regular item or, seasonal cock and balls. I don't know. They made a cool, when we stopped by, they made us, everyone should know, they make specialty donuts. And I think it's Kenneth, you mentioned in the book, he does wedding ceremonies too. So it's just all around, stop and shop and get your donuts, basically. Yeah. But they make specialty donuts, and they made this big one with the Vegan Roadie logo on it, and it was so cool. And I was just like, there's a donut with my logo on it. So like, everybody out there, go get a specialty donut from Voodoo. It's totally worth it. And while we're on donuts, in the Las Vegas chapter, you mentioned Ronald's Donuts. Can you just give a little shout out to Ronald's Donuts? Tell us what you know and what you like.
It's legendary. It's unassuming. It's one of those places that you have to be in the know to know that they actually even sell vegan donuts, because it's not a vegan donut shop. It's just one of those late night kind of haunts that have been, I don't even know how long it's been there. I'm guessing.
It seems like forever.
It kind of looks that way, yeah.
Yep.
But that's part of the charm.
Yes.
And so it's definitely one of those locals in the know places to go. You can't really, I've tried, you can't call them up, you can't order anything, you just have to go.
You got to go, and you got to get there because the vegan options sell out. And it's like you say, legend. It's very it's like an old school donut shop. I mean, it's been years since I went, but like, you're not going to get a latte there. You're getting a drip coffee if you're getting coffee, and you're getting your donuts, and you're walking out the door. Like, that's it. There's no bells and whistles, but that's like the cool part about it. I always dream of there being sort of like a vegan Dunkin' Donuts like that everywhere, where it's literally donuts and coffee. That's it. Like, none of the other stuff.
I wonder what the backstory is of what made them decide to put vegan options on there. It must be someone in the family. Is it that customers were coming in asking for it?
Yeah, it has to be how it happened. But it's so interesting because, again, unassuming, and they have all these vegan options. Well, you have an extra special chapter in the book that we have to mention because it's simply titled Recipes, and it's featuring recipes where people can utilize grounded foods, cheese. I have my eye on the truffled mac and cheese because I just can't resist a good mac and cheese. And I love that. What is it? Free cheese, free squeeze. What is it called?
Cheese-free cheese squeeze.
Cheese-free cheese squeeze. There we go. And what are a couple of your favorite recipes from this chapter?
Look, I love the mac and cheese as well.
And truffle, we've talked about that. You have a love for truffle too, so it's got all your things in it.
My favorite one is the only one that my husband didn't write as the chef. It's the one that I did, the Cypriot grain salad, which is based on a very, very popular restaurant back in Australia called Hellenic Republic. It's a Greek restaurant, and they do this Cypriot grain salad. It's very fresh. It's using nuts and seeds and ancient grains, pomegranate, lots of fresh herbs. It's just such a flavor punch, but for spring and summer, so refreshing.
Oh, I love it. I love pomegranate in a salad. It makes me so happy. It's always a nice little surprise. I love tossing that on my Caesar salad too. There is one you have in here that I just want to, it's a, what is it? It's a focaccia. What's the focaccia you have in here? Because, focaccia with hemp seed, goat cheese, cherry tomatoes, and peppers. Oh my gosh. It looks so good.
So this is an excellent example of when I just refuse to go in the kitchen and just get my husband to take over. That's he's a pastry chef. That's his forte. Cooking before we met, and once I met him, I'm like, all right, I'm out.
Takes the pressure out.
Exactly. He makes this one, and I absolutely love it. It's just, he uses the marinade from the marinated goat's cheese, so that olive oil to drizzle over it once it's just come out of the oven, so it kind of absorbs that flavor into it, and then you've got the pops of goat's cheese pressed into it.
It looks so good. I think it might be on my list there. I love a focaccia, first of all, and then when someone gives me like those little notes of things I can do there, I'm like, oh, that's great. And then the goat cheese on there just seems like a home run. So
I remember the last time he made it, actually for that photo shoot to take that picture, I ate all of it in one sitting. And I'm type 1 diabetic, so I felt very sick after that.
You're like, I gotta watch this.
Yeah, it was worth it. It was worth that pain. And I would do it again, quite frankly.
I appreciate your commitment to that focaccia. I mean, I gotta say, truly. Well, we've got 18 cities featured in the book. We covered a little over half of them. So everybody get the book, get into some more good eats across America with a glimpse into some of the vegan goodness offered in Atlanta, Austin, Chicago, Cleveland, Columbus, Dallas, Denver, Detroit, Kansas City, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Miami, New York, Orlando, Philadelphia, Portland, San Francisco, and Seattle. And hey, I'm in Atlanta, and this place wasn't around when you wrote this. They just opened, I think, since January. So if you ever get this way, I have to take you to La Samia. I love this place, owned by a husband and wife duo. And it's diverse cuisine of Latin America. And I'm telling you, the Cubano is to die for on the menu, as is so many other things. So that's got to be on the top of your list in Atlanta if you get this way. And what do you think, in your opinion, after writing this book, what do you think is the most vegan friendly city at this time?
Yeah, look, it comes down to population at the end of the day. It's the reason why we moved from Australia to California to launch our business, because even when you look at the total addressable market for plant-based foods, even Australia and New Zealand combined was still smaller than the state of California. So everyone's always going to say the big cities, LA, New York City, because just more people there, more restaurant owners. But let's talk about ones that surprise me, because maybe they punch above their weight in terms of population size.
Sure.
I think you mentioned it before. Denver was a big one for me. It sounds like I mean, I don't know what it was like several years ago, but as today, there just seems to be such a vibrant and bubbling industry of vegan restaurants and plant-based foods. And so many that I found out about after I'd finished the book.
I know, isn't that the thing about this? There's, and you know, it's, but again, time capsule, so it's appropriate.
Exactly. And then, you know, I was saying before, anytime you've got a really heavy traditional meat or dairy industry, you're going to find that counterculture. And so I think, I don't know this for sure, but I think you're going to find gems in places like, where am I thinking? It's on the top of my lips. It starts with M. W, Wisconsin. I was thinking.
Yes, you are. You're absolutely correct. You do. You find gems along the way because there's people making a change for the better everywhere that we don't even see because the population isn't there to put it out, you know?
Exactly. So that's what, I mean, I struggled in places like Kansas City, to be honest. That was a tricky chapter to write. Really not a lot. So I hope I scooped up.
You did. I was impressed when I opened it. I was like, what'd she find in Kansas City? Because we went there and we filmed at a couple places and I think they're closed now, except for Mud Pie, you know? So it's, but I was like, but then I in reading it, I was like, oh, great. Oh, good. And then Denver, I was so happy to see. And I'm so glad you mentioned it because about Denver for the longest time, I've been like, I feel like there should be more here. And now it seems like there is, since I've really gone and taken a look at Denver. So I'm loving to see that the options keep expanding everywhere. That's great.
I think we'll find more in places like Austin as well. That's been happening for a while, but a lot of it has to do with the amount of young people, I think.
Right.
People are Gen Z, you know, getting rid of the old guard.
And the perspective is shifting, you know, and now it is becoming just about great, delicious food, which is awesome. Well, if you could have one vegan meal from one place in this book right now, what would it be?
It's funny that you said beyond sushi earlier, because when you said that, I'm like, oh, I really crave sushi today. and that's the first thing I thought of. Yep. Also, because I was at the National Restaurant Show earlier this year, and I met the founder of Beyond Sushi, Guy.
Yes.
Who had apparently invested in a new alternative protein company called Chunk Foods, that's where I met him. I was tasting this new meat, like it's a steak substitute. Sure. And it's the first time that I had one of those holy grail moments of like, okay, this company's taken it they've got it to that next level that we've been waiting for.
Sure.
So I think we had Impossible and Beyond as that earlier generation of alternative meats, but these guys have managed to do that whole cut steak that is juicy. You cut through it. It's got like oomph to it, like it's got bite.
Sure.
To it. It doesn't just disintegrate in your mouth. And then I found out that Guy had invested, and I'm like, okay, I want to see if he incorporates this into
I wonder, is it available yet? So we don't know if he's incorporated it yet.
If you look up Chunk Foods, they launched earlier this year. I don't know if they're on the market yet, but I'm hoping they will be really soon, because they're
making their way.
A cool product.
Cool.
I think on that note, I'm keen to go back to Wild Seed. More because, not for the menu that I've had previously, but I think because I know so many other startup founders in the protein industry have their own products on the menu there. And I want to see how the restaurant is using them.
And where's Wild Seed? Where's that at?
In San Francisco.
San Francisco. Okay, Wild Seed.
But they've also got a new, I think it's called Rad Radish, a new venue, like a spin-off.
Okay.
that I haven't been to yet. It's only opened recently, so I'm really keen to check that one out as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, we got options, everybody, and we got things we got to try. And everybody, go get a copy of That's Plant-Based USA, a travel guide to eating animal-free in America. Now, listen, Veronica, what's a book brag for you? Something you're most proud of when it comes to this book?
I still can't believe that I managed to write this while moving to the other side of the world during COVID, launching a startup, fundraising first time, and living in a one-bedroom like Airbnb.
Oh, that just added a whole other element to it.
With my husband, one room, and our dog. Like it's, yeah. And when I don't know if you remember during COVID, but it was the Fairfax riots were the weekend that we moved in.
Oh my gosh.
LA, and it was on Melrose where it was happening, where the shops were being looted, the Starbucks was, Molotov cocktails, police with rifles everywhere, so much violence. It's like nothing I'd ever seen before. And that was the weekend that we moved in.
My gosh.
I remember writing this book in the closet because there were like helicopters and sirens and gunfire and stuff outside, and I had a deadline and I was freaking out, and I was doing investor meetings as well, just trying to be like,
oh my goodness,
we're just sorry, that's just the garbage people outside.
That's just, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Oh man. Well, that is so just the fact that you wrote it, I mean, really, with all those circumstances, that is book brag. That is something to be proud of. So
I can't believe I finished it.
I mean, congratulations on that. You did, and it again, everybody, it looks so cool. It really does. I love the design of it, and congratulations on finishing it, considering all of those elements too. Well, we've got your rapid fire round of questions here. You ready? Okay, here we go. Number 1, pancakes or waffles?
Pancakes.
Favorite pasta shape?
Ravioli.
If you could be an animal, what would you be and why?
That's a tricky one, Dustin.
I know so many answers it could be, really.
Yeah. What's yours? I don't have an answer.
I don't know now that you asked me that. I mean, I think I'd be something like I'd want to be like a giraffe or something, so I've got some advantage that I don't normally have. I mean, I guess all of them have some advantage, but like the tall neck, so I can like see over people or like grab people's hats and piss them off, I guess. I don't know.
You know what's frightening is that what went through my head immediately when you said that was, what animal is treated the best by humans?
Oh, I love that outlook though.
Because I don't want to be a chicken, do I?
Yeah, very true. So you'd probably want to be a dog or a cat then.
Yeah, domesticated.
Yeah, so you can so you can cuddle up and like just nap. Like, I get it. That makes total sense.
Okay, a pug. Let's say pug. The lap dog.
I love it. A pug's very specific, and there's all the reasons in the world to be a pug. If anything, just to be the cutest thing ever. So
a lot of responsibilities there. Just
Yep. Just eat, go to the bathroom, sleep. It's all good. Do you collect anything? Rescue animals excluded.
Clothes. This is a problem, apparently, according to my husband. It's the one thing I collect. I love my clothes. Again, time capsules. And I've disturbingly been keeping clothes since I was 12. I'm quite petite. I still fit into the same clothes that I had as a kid, but they'll come back around. Okay?
Yeah. And hey, if you still fit in them, you're being,
The problem is, when we moved here, we moved with you have to get a big shipping crate. It has to go on and send all your stuff over. We had 52 boxes of belongings, like our life possessions, to come over. My husband took up 2 of those boxes, and 50 of them was my stuff. It could be a problem, okay?
I mean, maybe slightly, who knows? Just a little.
Maybe going back to Australia, I'm going to have a rethink about
rethink of the clothes. And I imagine being in LA, you've gotten some decent new pieces then probably for your wardrobe, so...
No, this is what he complains is the problem, because I go out so rarely since COVID that I usually just wear what I call a lounge dress.
Yeah.
Or just a t-shirt with no pants. and I have no purpose for my couture anymore.
For all of the, yeah.
I refuse to throw it away.
I mean, I get it. I would not force you to throw it away. If you could cook for a dead celebrity, who would it be?
Interesting. This is going to be really nerdy, but I grew up as a mad Nirvana fan.
Okay.
I was just watching an interview with Kurt Cobain last
Yeah.
night, reminiscing of how obsessed I was when I was
Sure.
like 12, 13.
Yeah.
I think it was interesting. I think I even put it in the book that he was either vegan or vegetarian and very passionate about it. And it was, I mean, there's even a line in one of his songs in Something in the Way about it's okay to eat fish because they don't have any feelings. And it was a bit of a jab at animal agriculture. But it was something I didn't realize at the time. So I want to see what his thoughts were 20 years ago about that.
Yeah. That's it. I think that's a good choice there. Favorite quick food item to make when you need a meal fast?
Pizza.
Barbecue sauce or hot sauce?
Hot sauce.
Favorite flavor of ice cream?
Vanilla.
Purist. I think we're twinning a little bit. I love me just a straight up vanilla.
Yeah.
What's the last show you binge watched?
I'm such a Netflix. Okay. It's going to sound horrible.
Well, I think you mentioned you were binging Love is Blind at the top of this book when you got the call about the book, maybe.
For some reason, I love it because of the psychological experiment of it.
Sure.
It fascinates me to just, and I know so much of it is scripted, but to me, that's my outlet now.
But then it's also fascinating that people would show up to do it when it's scripted. So like, no matter which angle you turn it, it's still fascinating.
Exactly. And then just watching how it plays out, like how the dynamics, when they finally see each other, and you see that the reveal when the two couples meet and they're not blind anymore. And sometimes there's that split second where it's like, it's like it wasn't quite what I was expecting.
Right.
And it's so cringy, and you're like, oh, this is so bad, but I can't look away.
I can't stop watching. I completely understand. Is Love is Blind? Is that the name of it?
Yeah.
Was that your last one, or what's the most current one that you've binge watched?
Let me look up my Netflix account. I'm on here every day. Actually, In the Dark.
Okay.
About another blind one. About a blind woman and her guide dog, and she's a bit off the rails.
Oh, I'm gonna watch it.
Kind of,
okay.
Drunk, alcoholic. It's okay.
Okay.
My routine, and this is what I call my meditation, is when I get stressed, and I do very much with work.
Sure.
I watch crappy Netflix shows
Sure.
and book at the same time, and that is my time to zone out. That's
very
my
good.
husband's allowed to talk to me. Just Netflix is on. I'm chopping things, and that's my meditation.
That's a very good meditation. Well, speaking of chopping, what's the dish you made last?
Ooh, it was pizza.
Nice.
With experimental hemp cheese on it.
Yep. Of course. If you could pick up a certain skill instantly, what would it be?
This shows how competitive I am. My immediate thought was pastry chefing so that I can do better than my partner. Why did I just think of that immediately?
That is a very you're very competitive right away.
I didn't even think about it. It's just like pastry chef.
Oh, that's great. That's how the rapid fire works. So I love that, to get the first thought right there.
I would love to be able to make croissants.
If you could live in any decade, which would it be?
I wish I could go back to the 90s. Yeah. Just the days of good music.
Yes.
So I don't get music that kids listen to these days, but I'm trying to learn.
Same. Me too. And then I saw a music video the other day where it was so sexual, and I was like, is this like a thing now? I was like, oh my God, I'm old that I'm like feeling any type of, and I was like, this is like what Slave for You from Britney and Dirty from Christina was for me, I imagine. And now it's just like taken up like 10 notches, which at the same time I'm all about. I think it's great, but I'm just like surprised that it is just out there and accepted. And I'm like, well, this is great. I love it. Fantastic.
That now. Okay.
Yep. I'm here for it. And your last one, donuts or cupcakes?
Donuts.
All right. Well, Veronica, you did it. What's that?
You haven't even finished the question. Donuts.
That's good. I mean, hey, I love a person who knows whether it's a cupcake or a donut. I can't choose between the two. I want them all. But again, I have a sweet tooth, as I've mentioned. Well, listen, you did it. That was your rapid fire. So where can everyone find you on social media and the internet?
TikTok at Grounded CFC. And then I guess they can just Google me and find a lot of other stuff that I've written. I write a lot for Veg Economist. So you can find some of my more economic takes.
Okay.
My more business takes on how the food industry is going on Veg Economist.
Great. Awesome. Well, everyone, if you want to get a glimpse into eating vegan in the USA, be sure to pick up a copy of Plant-Based USA, a travel guide to eating animal-free in America, everywhere books are sold. Veronica, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for taking the time to chat with me today.
I've loved it.
Thank you so much for listening. We'd be so grateful if you would rate, review, and subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. It really does help us.
Yes, thank you so much. And don't forget to check out keeponcookin.com for all of the latest in recipes and Keep On Cooking updates. This has been a Muzzy Cat production.